Good day to you this day, Saturday, November 20th, 2021. I am Pastor Neil. Today we are I'm giving my initial reaction to the movie that was released this past Tuesday or Thursday evening, and that is Ghostbusters Afterlife. So I saw it last night at the theater. And so, just give you a little background for those who don't know. I'm a huge fan of Ghostbusters. I had the original film. I've watched it, and the second one. I've seen those movies so many times. During the past week, I've been watching Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, the real Ghostbusters cartoon. I started playing the video game last night, the remastered version of it. For a PlayStation, not the one that came out for Nintendo or whatever it was, way back when. But I'm a huge fan of Ghostbusters. I remember when I was a kid, I would go to the skating rink in my local town. Even though I couldn't roller skate, I enjoyed going just to hear the Ghostbusters theme because I'd play it quite often at the skating rink. There was a book at the local library at my high school, in my elementary library. They had a Ghostbusters movie book. I checked that out so many times. Like I said, I was the action figures, the proton pack stuff. I was all about Ghostbusters growing up, and watched every episode when it aired. And so when the second movie came out, it's kind of figured that there would never be another Ghostbusters. And a large part was because when Ghostbusters 2 was released, it did not have a favorable reaction. The original Ghostbusters remains a classic. It remains one of the, definitive films of pop culture. The movie was very brilliantly written, the original one. Great comedy, had a good story, great characters you loved, and everything. The second movie did not have the good initial reaction it did. Now, in my opinion, Ghostbusters 2's kind of gotten the same. It's had a similar fate to Batman Returns. Both Ghostbusters 2 and Batman Returns had the fate that both movies had a very poor initial reaction. And as time has passed, I believe that those movies are looked upon more favorably for different reasons. But Ghostbusters 2 is like that. It has become more favorable, at least in my eyes, and I think in the eyes of many others. It does have some brilliant moments. It's funny at times. I think it's got a good villain. I could still see watching it why we had the reaction, and there's still parts about it that I don't exactly like, but it's an enjoyable movie. I like watching it. 2016, it's pretty well known that there was a release of an all women's Ghostbusters, and this one kind of failed. And I know there's the belief that the reason it failed was because it was all women, but I'm sure for some people that's why. But that's not really the reason. At least for me, that was not the reason that I didn't like it. The reason I didn't like it was because the movie was silly. It did not have the same type of humor as the original Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters humor is kind of an organic humor. It's organic to the storytelling. It's organic to the things that are going on. It's never portrayed as being silly. The ghosts don't look silly. That's what the 2016 Ghostbusters did. It made everything just silly, goofy. The animation reminded me a lot, but the special effects or the images of the ghosts reminded me a lot of the movie Pixels, which is not a good comparison because the movie Pixels was a really bad movie. And understand 2016 Ghostbusters wasn't that bad, but just to give you an idea, the special effects really did impress. And I don't believe the problem was not that it was all women. It was, I think the actresses, if they had been given the right script, they could have done a really good movie. But the script, the story, the look of the movie, it just didn't work. So here we are, Ghostbusters Afterlife. And so directed by Jason Reitman, who is a good director. He directed Juno, which was a very popular film. Up in the Air, which is one of my favorite movies. Uh, which, by the way, both of those movies obviously are very different from Ghostbusters in terms of style and tone. But he kind of has the advantage that he was in Ghostbusters 2. He spent time around the cast of Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. Why? Because his father, Ivan Reitman, was the director of the first two Ghostbusters movies. And so he is familiar with what makes Ghostbusters work. Why was it successful? And so what he decided to do was not a reboot, but really a passing of the torch type movie. And Ghostbusters Afterlife succeeds in that passing of the torch. It's what it did. It runs this danger. Now, if you remember when Star Wars Force Awakens came out, initially the movie had very positive reaction. But as time passed, people complained that it was too nostalgic. There was too much in it that was too much like the originals. The original trilogy. Which, I still like the movie. I know a lot of people complained about it, and I actually was okay with a lot of it. But it did teach the lesson. You got to be careful with how you handle the balance between the new story and nostalgia. And so Ghostbusters very much is trying to teeter that. And here's the thing. It definitely has the nostalgia without a doubt. I mean, from the very beginning, you see one of the opening scene of the movie is some mystery person. You figured out pretty early on. It's Egon Spangler. Is running away from this mine, and the name of the mine is Shandor Mining Operations. If anybody's seen the original Ghostbusters and familiar, you know who Shandor is. Ivo Shandor was the guy that built the apartment in the original movie. And so he was very much a subject, a major character within that story. And so right away you have the nostalgia. Even the opening scene, it's kind of the opening shots of the movie. They start out with that very familiar Columbia Pictures image. I don't know about you, but I grew up, like I said, I grew up loving the first two Ghostbusters movie, and so much so, and I've watched those movies so many times. I see Columbia Pictures, no matter what the movie is. I see that lady standing there, and here I cannot help but think of Ghostbusters. I'm so familiar with that image, and it fading, and then hearing that Elmer Bernstein music. Which, by the way, speaking of which, so this leads me to the other thing. That Elmer Bernstein music, it just triggers. And that leads me to a thing. They very, very much rely on Elmer Bernstein's music. Which is okay, because Elmer Bernstein is a legend when it comes to film composers. He composed the original Ghostbusters, and he's kind of underappreciated. Everybody knows the Ray Parker theme. The theme song. Everybody knows that, right? But a lot of people, I think many of us have underappreciated the music that he composed for Ghostbusters, for the original. It's in the background throughout, and that's the thing is that it affects the story. But you don't totally notice it, and I think we took it for granted. And so Elmer Bernstein passed away in... let me double check on this. Elmer Bernstein passed away in 2004, and he was like I said, a legendary composer. The themes that really stand out for this is he was the composer for the Magnificent Seven, which AFI ranked as the seventh great best musical score of all time. He also did the score for. Let me see. I was just looking at this. Um, he did the score for To Kill a Mockingbird, which was ranked number 17. He also did Age of Innocence, The Great Escape, which you probably know The Great Escape. That's from The Great Escape. He composed that. You probably know it. The Ten Commandments, one of the all-time great scores. He composed that one. He did so many great film scores. I mean, there's certain composers that kind of rank towards the top of the all-time great composers. Obviously, John Williams is on that list. You throw in. The other ones that usually come to mind when you're talking about these great composers would be Bernard Herrmann. He composed Psycho, and then there's Ennio Morricone. He composed The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He's basically the great Western composer. And then I think Elmer Bernstein belongs in that because I mean just the sheer list of movies he did, and the sheer it's some truly great and iconic film scores. And so he is definitely so in the movie they use very heavily his score, and I think kind of to some degree rightfully so. Actually, I'm gonna just kind of check, and it's kind of works as a tribute to him in this movie because they play so much of it. The problem I have a little bit is I'm gonna check. I'm just kind of checking who actually was. I guess Rob Simonson was the actual composer for Ghostbusters Afterlife. So Rob Simonson's the composer. Elmer Burns, but like I said, he very much leaned into Elmer Bernstein's composition. The problem I kind of did have though is while I like that sound, I like that it was a tribute to him. Felt a little bit of a tribute, kind of holding on to that nostalgia. The problem I had a little bit is that Elmer Bernstein's score doesn't really fit the Ghostbusters Afterlife motif. I feel it kind of was a score that works better with mostly adults characters, and it also is a score that probably works better in New York City than it does in Oklahoma. So that's kind of one I appreciate the nod to that great composer, but at the same time, I don't think it always fit. There are scenes where it works great. There are some scenes that just did not match with the set, match with the scene. Speaking of Oklahoma being the set, this was a good move. It made the movie feel fresh. And the fact that they did not lean in on a new cast of adult actors, they could have gone and gotten some of the dream cast, because there's people that I thought who would be this generation's Ghostbusters. I thought about that. I thought a lot of some of the guys from How I Met Your Mother or the Big Bang Theory type cast. I think some of those guys maybe or gals, but I liked what they went with. They picked one of the actors from Stranger Things, which is smart because Stranger Things kind of gave a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a blueprint as to how to do a Ghostbusters movie in 2021. And you could definitely feel that Stranger Things vibe. And I think, honestly, these kid actors did a really good job. And let's see here. I gotta look up the actors. Because you have, you do have Paul Rudd in there, who, of course, he's going to be likable. He's always likable, right? He's liked in just about every movie he ever does, and kind of a perfect choice given the fact that the guy is, kind of a bit of a nerd himself, and so and you could tell he loved being in that movie, like. he got to play a fanboy in this movie a little bit. But then you had the main, you had the girl, the female character, yet Phoebe Spangler, who basically it's the granddaughter of Egon, which you got to that through the trailer, so I'm not really spoiling or anything, because that's what it is. It's focusing on the family that is the daughter and grandchildren of Egon Spangler, which was played by Harold Ramis in the original two films, and the Phoebe character, love that character. She did so well with her role. And so this is kind of going back to, I was actually reading an article by Time magazine, and they said, how did people not like that women were in Ghostbusters 2016, but they're okay with this girl in this one? It's like, and my response when I read that, I'm like, the problem wasn't that they were women. It wasn't a problem that they were female. The problem again was the script. And the case here is that Phoebe is an enjoyable character. I loved just that dry personality. Just a hard introvert. I loved. This was actually a really great moment. This is kind of speaking to introversion, and her friend, who's the name of the, calls himself Podcast. And so her friends asks her one scene's like, why aren't you revolted by the fact that your mother and your teacher are kind of romancing? And she says, I am. I just don't react like other people. Internally, I'm vomiting. And I love that. It's like, it's such a wonderful way of expressing a personality type that many of us have. That many people don't show emotions the same as others. They found a way to handle that, to react to it. I love the dry when she throw these kind of these jokes here and there. Some of them were such dark humor, but you couldn't help but laugh. Finn Wolfhard, he's the guy that he's the grandson. He's the one that came from Stranger Things. I think he fit in pretty well with the role. One thing I kind of wish that movies would start to kind of do less of, is the boy is the dumb kid, the not smart kid. I really wish they'd start to pull back on that, because there's kind of getting to be more and more of an attitude that boys can't be smart, and I wish wouldn't see that all the time. That the boy is always the one that's not very smart, very educated, or whatever. You see men who are educated, men who are smart, adults, but you don't very often see that in the kids in movies. And I think that's kind of becoming an increasing problems with movies. The mother is played by Carrie Coon, which I didn't realize this, but she played Proxima Midnight in Avengers Infinity War, which, wow, I loved her character in that movie, and she did pretty good in this one. She did well in this one. There's definitely complications in terms of her relationship to her father, who is Egon Spangler. Which, by the way, kind of makes me wonder who's the mother. And she must have had given. And I was trying to think about it. I was actually trying to map out the age. I mean, her kids are 15 and 12. Ghostbusters is 35 years old. I suppose if she had them when she was 20, I suppose that would have been possible. She had her kids at the age of 20, her first child. But otherwise, it's possible that she could have been a child he had even before he was a Ghostbuster, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, but it's kind of interesting to think about, because, and by the way, this kind of leads into another thing. It's like, when would he have had her? When would she have been born? When would this child have been born of the mother? The '89 movie that's 32 years ago. And hopefully she didn't have Trevor when she was 12. There'd be some issues there. So it seems like it's quite possible that she was born before he became a Ghostbuster. So and kind of that leads me to the other thing is one complaint I kind of have in the movie. This is similar to the complaint I had in the Star Wars Force Awakens, actually the sequel trilogy, which I had a lot of complaints. But one of the things I didn't like is in the sequel trilogy, they did not do a lot of mentioning of the prequels. And I didn't like that because I know the prequels had a bad reaction, and there's still problems with the prequels. But I felt like it should have been at least acknowledged to more degree. Similarly, for Ghostbusters Afterlife, I know Ghostbusters 2 was not as well received when it came out in theaters. But I felt it should have been acknowledged a little bit more in this movie. They should have acknowledged that it happened to some degree. And so that is a complaint I kind of have in the movie. I love that they really, really lean into the original film, but I feel like they should not have completely abandoned the second film. Of course, the original cast all makes an appearance, even Harold Ramis to some degree. Obviously, it's not new footage because Harold Ramis passed away. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love in this movie is that Harold Ramis' presence was very, very much felt. And he died. Harold Ramis, for those of you who don't know, he passed away in 2014 at the age of 69. Harold Ramis was a comedic legend for the movies that he created. So, I mean, he was not just an actor. Yes, he acted as Egon Spengler, but he wrote some of the all-time great comedies. So he wrote Caddyshack. He directed National Lampoon's Vacation. He wrote Groundhog Day. Actually, I gotta read. There's more to this. Yeah, he wrote National Lampoon's Animal House. He wrote Stripes. He wrote, those are some great comedies. And of course, the Ghostbusters 1 and 2. He wrote the Ghostbusters video game. All right. So you've got, for him, as far as his creations, you've got National Lampoon's Animal House. You've got Stripes, Ghostbusters, Back to School starring Rodney Dangerfield, Armed and Dangerous. You have Caddyshack, National Lampoon's Vacation, Groundhog Day, which is considered one of the greatest screenplays ever. Analyze This, he wrote. The last movie he ever did was Year One, which I know was not extremely successful. But, I mean, the man made some truly legendary, great comedies. And so, like I said, Groundhog Day alone and Ghostbusters alone, what he made with those films is to be applauded, to be remembered. And I love that the movie, in large part, is a homage, it's a tribute to Harold Ramis. And that's why, towards the end of the movie, you kind of get emotional. Because I have such respect for what that man did in terms of film. I'm a person who for me, I am more intrigued by a great film writer than I am by a great actor or actress. Because I love the storytellers. And Harold Ramis was one of the great storytellers, great comedic writers. He wrote stories that kind of had that organic comedy. Most of his films had that. And I liked that his presence was felt all throughout the movie. And speaking of things that were presences that they acknowledged, Elmer Bernstein's music was definitely played through, so he was paid homage to. He's somebody that's passed away since they did Ghostbusters 1 and 2. They definitely acknowledge Harold Ramis as he has passed away since those movies came out. And this was kind of an interesting one that they kind of paid homage to, and I didn't really think about it until I was on the way home. One of the last shots in the movie, and I'm telling you this, and saying this is not really too much of a spoiler. One of the last shots in the movie is you see the camera going over the bridge of going into New York City. And it was a shot that was familiar from the Ghostbusters movies. We saw that skyline shot many times in both movies. It's something that I know you notice. It doesn't seem quite the same. Why? I mean, something's missing. And I thought, wait, I know what's different. And I realized with that shot, even though is because this year it's 20 years. I believe that shot, subtle as it may have been to some degree, was remembering the World Trade Centers. Were no longer in that shot, which were so prominently shown in both Ghostbusters movies on multiple times. And they showed where those two buildings used to be in the closing shots on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I think that's intriguing. And so the movie, I think it hit. It's its own thing. It is very, very much its own thing. By being in Oklahoma, very much helped in that regard. But it leaned in nostalgia. It connected itself very, very much to the original story. This might be a spoiler. Oh well. But I think it's pretty much around the internet quite a bit that the main villain in this is Gozer. Just as she was in the original film and she is in the video game. And by the way, the video game is being treated as canon. The video game is functionally the third movie. But that plot line I think was a good decision because it was a way to connect the two, to put it into the franchise more than just simply, oh, I'm the grandkids. Were they there? Why did they end up in Oklahoma? It gives a very nice tie, and I think it worked well. I don't think they overdid nostalgia. They did it right. There are two post-credit scenes, and I'm not going to talk about those, even though I know that they spoiled the entire movie for people. I think that's silly to do. The post-credits should not judge the movie. All right? Nobody should be judging the quality of the movie based upon the post-credits. Because they're more or less, they are kind of little extra snippets, and to some degree, a lot of times, they are promos for what could be the future of the franchise. And so I don't think that should dictate the quality of the film. The film in itself, up to the credits, is great, and I don't have a problem with the post-credit scenes, but I'm not going to talk about them because I want you to be able to see it for your own, because that would definitely be a spoiler that I don't want to give away. But the movie did what it needed to do. It connected to the aura of the original films, but it was its own thing. The entire cast did well. I liked the look of it. I liked the feel of it. The ghosts looked good better than the 2016 ghost. They didn't look cartoon. Again, it wasn't silly. It wasn't cartoonish. They gave a little bit of a grit and a darker colors. This is kind of a reminder how important the use of colors are in film. The wrong use of colors can give the wrong tone in an entire film. And Ghostbusters Afterlife found the right tone. So all in all, it's a good movie. I loved it. I probably am going to go see it again. Because if you're a Ghostbusters fan, go enjoy it. Sit back, enjoy these new characters. Kind of feed into the stuff that you loved in the past. Enjoy this new world, and I can't wait to see what they do beyond this. So there you go. That's my half-hour reaction to Ghostbusters Afterlife. See you later.